Right then, brother. Thank you for a lovely dinner. You come and join me for a glass of wine. I've got something on to chat with you.
Well, that's very kind of you to invite me in my own home.
In your own home.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So the food wasn't too bad?
Not too bad at all. It's your culinary skills have improved in this lockdown.
They have indeed, yes. Yeah. I've been locked down to actually focusing a bit on cooking some decent food, I hope so.
Very nice, thank you.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
And so just like to have a little chat with you, if we can, about something that's coming up in the future.
Yeah.
And it's looking ahead to a particular date next year, so the 15th of September 2021. I just wonder if...
Wow. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? 2021.
Well, yeah, it does. We think back all those years ago when we saw the moon landings and stuff, it does sound very futuristic. But does that date ring any bells with you? 15th of September 2021.
Can't ever think that far ahead, to be perfectly honest. So.
Well, I think we should have a little toast towards that day, because it's going to be a very important day for you and me.
Really?
We will have been golf pros for 100 years on that day. So I think we should raise our glasses to that.
100 years?
100 years.
Joking. 100 years.
It's 100 years of golf proing.
Christ, that's several lives, isn't it? Well, cheers. Well done.
Indeed.
Because I have got the majority of them, of course.
Well, slightly.
Seeing your brother talking here.
Only slightly. But yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Sort of looking back to
15th of September. So you sound like you've got an idea.
I have, but we'll come to that a little bit later.
Okay.
So let's for the moment, before we look forward, let's look back and just think back to where we started out and what happened at the beginning. And I joined you in 1974 when you were the club pro at Barton-on-Sea.
Yeah.
And I just turned pro. Needed a lot of help to try and get my game to kind of a reasonable standard for a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And we started trying to see what there was out there in the way of technical help and swing techniques, books, etc., that we could actually use. Yeah. And there wasn't a great deal about, was there?
No, because when you think about it, I'd only just come off the circuit.
Yep.
About a
couple of years before,
18 months before, something like that. So I had a lot of experience, but I had no real training. So it was all a question of, what is this whole thing about? What can we find? Yeah.
And if you remember those days, we kind of basically tried to investigate what there was. We thought there was a lot of good stuff in America.
We did.
And they were advanced from what we were teaching in the UK. Mm. But we decided, I think, fairly early on, not to try and follow, but to just try and investigate and be curious and try and break everything down to try and work out what was logical and what wasn't. And we became quite sort of technical teachers in those early days.
We were certainly very technical over the 74, you were saying?
Yeah.
But 74 to 80, 82-ish.
Yeah.
Very technical. And I think looking back, and okay, I might be saying this and blowing our own trumpet, but I think that we were very advanced in what we were saying.
Yeah. I mean, 1975 was when we got that first video camera.
Yeah. And I do remember that we had an ethos where we talked. We asked questions. I always encouraged you and the other assistants that we worked with over that time to question what we were saying.
Exactly.
Not to accept anything.
That's right.
And the video taught us a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
We were able to question things which were standard practice because it didn't stand up to scrutiny, not just in video, but when you went frame by frame and you could see, wow, that's nothing like what we thought.
No, and I can remember so many people in those early days telling us, oh, well, the reason I'm not playing well and I need some lessons is I'm bringing my head up. Oh, and time again, we would show them at impact with their head down, not up at all. And in fact, what we were seeing a lot of the time was they were keeping their head down way too long, not coming up. They were working so hard to keep their heads down, they basically couldn't get through the ball.
blocking their own way through the ball.
Yeah, and video helped us to sort of prove that to people, and it kind of opened our minds. And one of the things I remember so clearly was the little notebooks we had. And
I'd forgotten all about those notebooks.
Yeah, that's right. And if we were working, I think we were about 3 or 4 of us in those times, and we all had a notebook, and we would compare notes, and we would do drawings, and just challenge everything basically, and try and find if there were better ways to do things. And so I think we were pretty advanced in technical terms in those days. But it seems to me sad that here we are nearly 50 years later, and they're still sort of coaching the same kind of things, only more complicated. Instead of what we would have expected is that as you kind of get through that, you work out how it works, and then you simplify it. And it seems to me that so many of the coaches have actually, they've got all the technical know-how and what have you, but they've just complicated it and made it too difficult for the average golfer.
I think you're absolutely right, because we could look at some of the things that they're saying and we don't understand what they're talking about. We don't. And if we don't understand it with our near 100 years, what chance has the average golfer got? Yeah. No chance.
I stood beside one of the ex-tour players who's now a well-known coach, who I won't mention by name, but I stood beside him when he was teaching a young pro, a guy in his 20s, and I was in the next bay, and so I could overhear what was being said. And by the end of the lesson, this guy, an hour's worth of information, I mean, I was confused about what he was saying. Poor guy there, you could see he literally, his mind was just so full of different technical thoughts. There's no way he could swing a golf club easily.
It's frightening.
And it is frightening. It's a shame that it seems to have gone that route, because that wasn't what we'd hoped for.
It certainly wasn't our intention. The intention was always, we need to find more so that we can deliver something that people can do and people can get better from. And I think we always had the ethos of people should be enjoying this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how often do you see people out on the golf course having fun?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the responsibility of a pro. Something I've said right from the early days to the people I used to coach was that I should be the golf encyclopedia. And what my job should be is to actually open the encyclopedia to the right page that you read. You don't need to know the encyclopedia. You just need the one page that actually is going to help you. And that, I think, as an ethos for golf professionals, should be the direction that they go in. But it doesn't seem to be there in the...
Experts, unfortunately, are people who should be able to explain something to somebody who isn't an expert so that they understand it. Unfortunately, they tend to use their jargon, their language, which only they and fellow experts can understand. And of course, that leaves the layman completely in the dark. So it's a bit of a shame that we're talking about 100 years next year. And has the game benefited from all of this effort by golf professionals to teach the game?
Well,
it's a big question in my mind.
Let's hope they're on a journey, a bit like the one we were on. And let's hope that they come to the same conclusions in due course. But right now, today, I don't see it.
I certainly don't see it.
So just again, thinking back to those times, you helped me so much with my golf swing in those days, and helped me to play to a better standard. I remember breaking 80 for the very first time, which took me a long, long time to do. And I remember within 6 weeks breaking 70. So that kind of, the trajectory was very fast at that point in time. And then, in the early 80s, I went off and became a club pro at one club. You went somewhere else. And then in 87, you went to France. And I think there was an interesting point there that we both had some needs beyond just how to swing the club technically better.
We were, certainly in the 80s, we went from this strict technical method that we thought we had, which was the best thing since sliced bread, and we started to learn things that made us question that. And then we started to understand more about coaching rather than teaching, just in the early throes of that. And certainly for me, there were two very important things that happened in around 1980. One was reading The Inner Game of Tennis. And why would I read a book about tennis? I don't quite know why I did that. I didn't play tennis, I didn't really understand the game of tennis, but I did understand one thing in that book where he talked about self one and self two, the different parts of your brain in their internal conversation. And that talked to me. That really spoke a huge amount to me. And then I went on a weekend course at Hampstead Squash Club with two sports psychologists, and again opened my mind tremendously. That you could have a perfect golf swing and not have the mindset to perform well. And performance and technique are, yes, they go hand in hand to a certain extent, but if you haven't got the mindset. And then I went to France in '87, and in 1989 I qualified for my card on the French circuit, because I had the idea of playing a bit again. And I came home and I thought, well, my golf swing's fine, I'm hitting the ball well, but I don't think my mind is strong enough. And I found a guy called Michel who really helped me tremendously. From probably early 1990 I started working with him. So that's why my book, Positive Impact Golf, has got, the first half is about the golf swing, the easiest golf swing, which physically is body friendly and it's easy and it's comfortable. And the second part of the book is about psychology. So you are now under the umbrella of the easiest swing. Your easier golf psychology course is, if you were writing a book, it would be all psychology. So when did your psychology journey start? Because we weren't really close at that time.
No,
purely
because
geography.
We were such a long way apart from each other, and we would talk occasionally, but not frequently. And it was a pure coincidence for me. I had had a little bit of hypnotherapy back in the late 70s, and I needed some help with my game, trying to get my qualification. I was struggling with the playing test.
I remember that. Big time.
And it was a really big problem for me. And I did had some hypnotherapy, which helped me through that. And so I knew that there was something about the way the mind worked and the relationship between that and just how you swing the golf club. But I was curious for more. And then one day I was teaching a guy who asked me if I played in tournaments. And coincidentally, at that particular time, I just decided to stop playing any tournament golf. Because I was getting frustrated that I felt like I was playing as well as the guy who was going up and getting the check every time, but I wasn't. I was always a few shots behind, and it was because at some point in the round I would always have one or two bad holes, and it would always be at different places in the round, so there was no consistency to it, so I couldn't put my hand on what it was. But it happened enough times for me to decide that my time was better off spent at the club, working as a club pro, giving lessons, rather than the costs of going and playing in tournaments and not winning a check. And this guy said to me, well, I've got a colleague who might be able to help you, and he's a professor of sports science at Canterbury College. So I thought, well, I'll give him a try and go and have a meeting with him. And I went with the anticipation that he might flick a switch in my head and show me something that I was doing wrong. There'd be one key that would actually unlock me. Well, I worked with the guy for 2 years, and in the early stages I went to see him every week, and I had to keep a diary of all the things I was working on and learning and my feelings and everything about it. And what I discovered fairly soon on into the course was that there wasn't just a switch, there was a whole wall of switches. And I had most of them switched off. So no matter how well I was swinging the golf club, I hadn't got things switched off.
There was me. Okay, I wasn't coaching in those days, but early on when I didn't know all those switches existed, let alone the fact they're all switched off.
Yes, exactly. And so once I learned about that, I started using that in my coaching, and kind of went on to write a lot about it. And I had written work for my pupils, so I was working on their psychology with them, and it was helping people a lot. And I just realized at some point in time that I had to do something with all this information. And it was really only when the lockdown happened at the beginning of this year that I sat at home and thinking, how can I get this information out to people? And I thought, well, rather than trying to write a book, which I'd attempted lots of times but never really completed, perhaps I could use the combination of videos and written work and actually put a course out there that anybody could go on, regardless of what standard, whether they're a pro, an amateur, doesn't matter. And they could find something for them in it.
Yeah.
So I don't tell people what to do in the course. I allow them to discover for themselves the keys that are going to help them to get better.
Would it be right in saying that you that they fill out a lot of information which helps them to become aware of where they are and where maybe they, with some tools and options that you give them, they then have the wherewithal to actually make some changes?
Yeah, absolutely.
That are not complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose the thing that every golfer knows, you get to a point at some times when you just want to snap the club over your knees and you've kind of lost your cool. You maybe saying things you don't intend to say, and it's bringing out a side of your character you don't particularly want to see.
So, can I just check, is this the Gordon that you talk about with so much reverence?
Yeah, this is Gordon Underwood.
And am I right in thinking that Gordon actually, who maybe wasn't a golfer, but he came and walked around with you? No,
Gordon didn't, funny enough. Well, what actually happened was that he because he was a tutor and he had degree students there, one of the students, a guy called Will, he was in his third year and needing to write his dissertation, and he was doing work on the relationship between performance of top sports people relative to heart and what's going on in their mind. So, in other words, you know, what's the beat rate of their hearts at certain points in competitions, and what's going on psychologically. And so what we agreed to do was I was going to play 3 competitive rounds of golf where he recorded everything I said. So it was 12 hours of recording of everything I said on a golf course, which kind of, you know, most of it's unrepeatable.
I was going to say, has it been censored?
Yeah, indeed. And when I looked back on it and actually read through the transcript afterwards, I was astonished. I couldn't believe some of the things I said as I went round. And first thing I think for a lot of golfers is listen to yourself and actually make note of what you're saying. Because I hear it time and time again when I go out and play with ordinary club golfers, and you hear the negativity before they've even addressed the ball.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I'm playing rubbish at the moment, or, you know, I played this hole so badly last week, or, you know, there's all sorts of things. All things that distract you from what you should be concentrating on. And so if you can become more aware of the things, exactly as you say, you have a chance to actually put them right.
Yeah, and then you've got the simple tools that allow them
tools to put them right, absolutely. And I have some on the course. There's not just simple tools, some of them are a bit of fun as well. I have an exercise which is called the Magic Mirrors exercise.
Hold on, fun?
Yeah, exactly, fun.
Sounds strange, doesn't sound like golf to me.
Golf is a game.
Oh.
Yeah. Does anybody remember that?
A game.
And what do you do with games? You play them, don't you?
Yeah.
So when you think of when you were a child and used to play games, they were fun.
I used to go out and play badly.
Yeah.
You can't, as a kid, you can't go out and play badly, can you? You go out and you play.
Play, that's it.
And things happen, good and bad, but you're still far better than doing anything else, isn't it?
And so one of the keys is actually, in due course, is learning how to bring back that fun and enjoyable element to the game, so that it's actually constructive and you feel better about playing, and you succeed because you're having fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And if any golfer who's lost that and has got themselves backed into a corner where all they can feel is frustration and anger and fear. You mentioned that in a conversation earlier, talking about playing and being fearful. And we've seen this with people we've talked with, that, you know, they get frightened of the golf course. If you're in that state, you can't expect to play well.
No.